This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Well, as we said, this coming Sunday is BaOmer. BaOmer means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And Rabbi Glatstein, who has been a guest of ours before, he is the rabbi, the Moreh D'Astra of Kehilas Tiferes Mordechai, founder of Machon Maggid Harakiah in Cedarhurst, New York, has a very popular website, rabbidg.com, and is viewed on many, many different platforms. He's out with a brand new book. It's an ArtScroll release. Go to artscroll.com. Make sure to use promo code Radio24 for your major discount and your free shipping. Again, go to artscroll.com. Make sure to always use promo code Radio24. The book is called BaOmer, The Fire and the Soul, The Mystical Power of BaOmer, Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, and the Zohar HaKadosh. Rabbi Glatstein, a pleasure to welcome you back to JMintheAm.
Good morning, Rav Nachum. How are you?
Baruch Hashem, doing fine. A happy early BaOmer to you.
Likewise. Thanks for having me.
Motzei Shabbos it starts. BaOmer is Sunday. I think this is one of the things, and this is, of course, only to help remind people that people like yourself have done a tremendous amount of research that we're going to be gaining from through this book. I think BaOmer is one of those days and topics that the more I study it, learn about it, and hear about it, the more complicated it gets. There's so much to this day. There is so much built in to the day of BaOmer, the type of celebrating, the type of inspiration we're supposed to get from it, the mix of sadness and happiness for obvious reasons because of what the Omer represents in general. Rabbi Glatstein, do you agree with me that BaOmer is more complicated than we think?
Well, it's more profound than people realize. It's more than just shooting bows and arrows and joyous festivity. If I may say, BaOmer has actually become the most the celebrated day on the Jewish calendar. There is no event throughout the life cycle of Yom Tovim that has more participants. You know that last year, 500,000 Jews made their way to Meron. Unfortunately, that is not available this year. But I'm particularly excited because there is another tzaddik who has his yahrzeit on BaOmer, the Ramah, who the Shulchan Aruch is based upon, and we're going to be leaving Wednesday night to Krakow to be at the Ramah's kever for BaOmer. So, if you can't be at Meron, that's Krakow's a nice place to be. But I say if you can't be by either, then by studying the Torah of Rabbi Shimon, it's like you're virtually transposed to Meron and to connect with his amazing Torah and sanctity and elevation.
So you'll be spending Shabbos in Krakow?
Yes.
And the Ramah's yahrzeit is a definitive. We know his yahrzeit. With Reb Shimon, there's it's a little bit more of a cloudy situation with his yahrzeit, correct?
Exactly. Actually, there's a lot of uncertainty whether the Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, in fact, passed away on BaOmer. The Chida writes that we don't have any authoritative source that Reb Shimon Bar Yochai passed away on BaOmer, which adds to the mystery and mystique of the day where so many people are flocking to the kever, and yet we're not even certain that it's his yahrzeit.
Right, pretty interesting. And by the way, I got to put this in because I've been on this bandwagon for many, many decades already. There's a benefit. It's unfortunate and terrible, the circumstances of this year's BaOmer and Meron, obviously, because the safety and security situation has called for basically no event or a very, very, very limited event. But the benefit is, frankly, as we said last week on the air, that we know that when BaOmer is on Sunday, there's a tremendous amount of Chilul Shabbos that takes place on Saturday, on Shabbos, in order to prepare for what, is a tremendous movement of hundreds of thousands of people right after Shabbos up to Meron. And at least, there's a silver lining that this year that's not going to happen. So I never really understood the whole Motzei Shabbos Sunday thing because I thought that, there would be more sensitivity to that. But in fact, this year, because of the way the security situation is, that might be a drop of a silver lining. Just wanted to put that in there and, for whatever.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, for whatever it's worth, so to speak. Yeah, I always thought that the Torah giants would be much more concerned about that. In terms, just like the Rabbanut is concerned about Chilul Shabbos when it comes to Yom HaZikaron and Yom HaAtzmaut, and that's why those days are moved. But again, this is something we discussed last week on the air, just an observation that I think is an important one. So where does this come from? We know, as we were taught in yeshiva, that Lag BaOmer is this, break in Sfiras HaOmer, where either the Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva actually stopped dying, or they had, they had all died by then, because, there are many who hold that Lag BaOmer is the end of that period. And of course, there are others that feel that Lag BaOmer is just a pause in that terrible tragedy, and that has to be acknowledged, that there was a day where that tragedy, was not, didn't happen. So where did this all come from? Is Lag BaOmer and its popularity all an outgrowth of the history that we know of Rabbi Akiva's Talmidim?
Yeah, so even that point that the students of Rabbi Akiva stopped passing away on Lag BaOmer also is not mentioned in the Gemara, which is also a great mystery. All the Gemara tells us is that the students passed away between Pesach and Shavuos. The Gemara makes no mention that they stopped dying at any point during the days of Sfira. It's based on a tradition we have from the Gaonim that the Meiri cites. So the fact that the students stopped dying, that's a tradition that's up to question exactly when did that happen. And furthermore, if you think about it, is that really cause of celebration? If the reason they stopped dying is because they had all died, that would be a pretty unusual reason to celebrate. Imagine, we're all dancing and in great festivity. Why? Because they all passed away.
Right.
So it definitely requires much further analysis. There is really a beautiful idea that elevates Lag BaOmer to a completely different status. Namely, we just read in Parsha Emor, the Parsha of all the Yomim Tovim. We read about Pesach, Shavuos, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, but included in that discussion are the days of the Omer. And one may wonder, what are the days of Sfiras HaOmer doing in a discussion of the Yomim Tovim? The days of Sfiras HaOmer,
good point,
aren't they days of mourning? They're days of mourning. Well, they're in the wrong Parsha.
Right.
But that demonstrates to us that fundamentally the days of the Omer are part of the cycle of Yom Tov. They could be viewed really as a Chol HaMoed between Pesach and Shavuos.
And they weren't sad days then in the time of Kabbalah Satorah.
Certainly they were not sad days. Yeah. And even today then, they really retain their fundamental status of Yom Tovim. It's just they're overridden. It's canceled. It's nullified because of the mourning of the students of Rabbi Akiva.
Right.
But on Lag BaOmer, when they didn't die on that day, so it's not that we're celebrating they didn't die. It's that the original status of Yom Tov is able to shine forth. It's able to be restored. Really, Lag BaOmer, in a sense, is a biblical Yom Tov spoken about in Parshat Emor. Mm-hmm. So that's an important element of Lag BaOmer.
Sort of representing the entire Sfiras HaOmer, right? Is that how we would put it?
Yeah, representing the entire Sfira.
Right.
And any day that would not be canceled or nullified would have retained that status. Right. But that day that did retain that status was the day of Lag BaOmer.
Rabbi Daniel Glatstein's with us. The book is called Lag BaOmer, The Fire and the Soul. Get it. You need it by Motzei Shabbos, everybody, at the minimum. It'll actually be an amazing Shabbos read for this coming Shabbos. Go to artscroll.com. So, what's unbelievable in terms of this whole, and really what you just said might help us understand this. because it is elevated more. When we think of minor holidays, Pesach Sheni's coming up this week, and you know, you think of Shushan Purim outside of Yerushalayim, and you know, days like that. There's something. There's a slight ritual. There's a minig to do something nice, have some matzah for breakfast. This coming Wednesday, things like that. But you may just have explained that as much as Lag BaOmer we would think would be in that category where it should be recognized. Don't say Tachanun on that day, that type of thing. But because of how you just connected it literally to a Oraisa, literally to the holidays that we know are, that we are obligated by because it's in the Torah, I feel like all that gives it a certain elevation. And then, of course, you add the whole mysticism part of it, the whole Reb Shimon Bar Yochai part, the whole Rabbi Akiva students, again, according to the opinion, stop dying that day. The entire, heights of spirituality, Zohar HaKadosh, et cetera, that one can reach. And obviously the day has become much bigger. Do you think that that's a legitimate way of looking at it because of its source? Because of its source, it has a little bit of a different element. Pesach Sheni, as I'm thinking about it, Pesach Sheni is not in that list of holidays that you just went through and that we read this past Shabbos, and and certainly Shushan Purim isn't. Do you think that might be an approach that we continue to need to explore? Definitely
a foundational approach to understanding Lag BaOmer. You could think of it that these days have this tremendous power. They are fueled by them being mentioned in the Parsha of the Yomim Tovim, but they're all covered over, and they have no way to express themselves. But there's this one little opening. All these 49 days only have this one little opening to burst forth their biblical power, and it's like all 49 days come bursting forth like a geyser on the 33rd day of the Omer. So, right. It gives us a little bit of an understanding for this magnetic pull that people have to Reb Shimon and to Meron and to enjoying Lag BaOmer. It's this supernatural force that has no way to express itself other than this little Pesach, this little opening on the 33rd day of the Omer.
And that's all, and again, the Meron connection is all because of Reb Shimon. This assumption or this tradition that it's his yard site, and we use that opportunity to use that location to enhance the day.
Yeah, if I may, even aside from the element of it being Reb Shimon's yard site, or if it's Reb Shimon's yard site,
right.
In general, there's a certain mystique and mystical element of Lag BaOmer because it's the 33rd day of the Omer. The number 33 is a very mystical number. There's an idea that there are 32 regular elementary pathways of wisdom in the Torah, and that is reflected in the opening of Bereshis. When Hashem creates the world, you'll find the word Elohim 32 times, and that represents the 32 foundational pathways of Torah. Wow. But the number 33 represents the secrets of the Torah, the hidden light of the Torah. Even the 33rd word of Bereshis is Tov. Vayar Elokim es ha'ar, God saw the light, ki tov, that it was good. That represents the hidden light of the Torah. So the 33rd day of the Omer is deeply rooted in the secrets of the Torah, the mysticism of the Torah, the Kabbalistic wisdom. And that was something that Reb Shimon Bar Yochai brought to the world. So even aside from it being Reb Shimon's yard site, it's also the day that begins the preparation for Kabbalas HaTorah, for the more sublime elements of the Torah. So in other words, the first 32 days we prepare for the foundational elements of the Torah. Right. The last 17 days, beginning Lag BaOmer, we prepare for the secrets of the Torah. This is alluded to in the words Leiv, Tov. Leiv, Lamed Beis, the first 32 days of the Omer. Those 32 days we have to acquire a Leiv, a heart, a mind. And now we're ready for Tov, 17 days. 17 days to tap into on whatever level one is able to, even just to have a little bit of a taste or flavor of the secrets of the Torah. And that's another important element of Lag BaOmer.
And there's a 2-word phrase that's inserted every night when one does the entire ritual, the entire service of counting of the Omer. What is the what are the 2 words on Lag BaOmer? I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I'm trying to think.
Yeah, so that's also a very beautiful point. The 2 words that we add on Lag BaOmer, referring to the Sephira, the mystical emanation of the day, is Hod Shebahod.
The category counting. The category counting, I would say, right? Hod Shebahod is 33. Wow. That's on the 33rd day.
And you know what's amazing is that the word Hod, which maybe could be literally translated as splendor, comes from the root Haida of gratitude. Right. And this is very significant because, from a Torah standpoint, how do you understand why the students of Rabbi Akiva stopped dying on Lag BaOmer? Why that day? Why the 33rd day? Was there something about that day? Was the water healthier that day? Was the air cleaner that day? What was it about that day that the plague stopped? From a Torah standpoint, how do we define life? What's the meaning of life? David HaMelech tells us repeatedly, Loi hamesim yahaluka, the dead can't praise Hashem. Reb Nachum, there are a lot of things dead people can't do. They can't listen to your program either. They can't go golfing. They can't go bowling.
Can't go to shul.
They can't go to shul. They can't put on tefillin. They can't learn Torah. Why does David say they can't thank you? Or we say every morning, God, ma betza b'dami, what benefit would you have in my demise? Hayoidecha afar, will the earth thank you? As if to say that if I go, I can't thank you anymore. Yeah, I can't do anything. Can't tie my shoelaces. Can't brush my teeth. But from here we see that thanking Hashem is not something that we do when we're alive. It's the very definition of life from a Torah standpoint. We say, V'chol hachayim yoidu chasela. The living, thank you. What do you mean? The living could do everything. No, everything we do is only what we do. But thanking Hashem is the very definition of life. In fact, the word Chayim is an acronym, a Rashi Tevos. Chayim stands for Chayla, someone who is healed from a sickness. Yam, someone who crosses the sea. Yisurim, someone who's out of jail. And the Mem stands for the one who travels through a midbar. And this represents the 4 people who have to show gratitude to Hashem. Gratitude is the very definition of life. Lag BaOmer is Hod Shebahod. Gratitude, Sheba gratitude, right. The epitome of gratitude, the pinnacle of gratitude, the crescendo of gratitude. On this 33rd day, which epitomizes gratitude, which is the very definition of life, that's when the students of Rabbi Akiva stopped dying. That was their merit to stop dying. So it's a great lesson that for all of us to apply, that the more we devote ourselves and focus on thanking Hashem, the more that will bring us and our families and Klal Yisrael life. That is the greatest merit for life. This is what saved the students of Rabbi Akiva. This is the explanation of Rabbi Yosef Engel, who, by the way, was one of the last Rabbanim in Krakow, and he gave this drasha on Lag BaOmer in the shul of the Ramah in honor of the Ramah's yahrzeit.
And when did he do that? How long ago?
About 100 years ago.
And now you'll be back 100 years later, probably repeating that vort, I bet.
I have yeah.
I would have a feeling. Lag BaOmer is written by Rabbi Glatstein, Lag BaOmer, The Fire and the Soul. Check it out, brand new from Art Scroll. It is amazing when you think about it. I mean, look, it's not unusual in our tradition that somebody could have this type of, effect on Klal Yisrael, effect on the Jewish people for, such a long period of time. But still, when you think about it, it's almost 2,000 years with Shimon Bar Yochai, and his work and his inspiration, whether it's his yahrzeit or not, has had a profound effect on the tradition of Klal Yisrael. And I'm assuming, I have to assume this, that in the last 100, 200, 300 years, as as an attraction of Hasidus, spirituality, mysticism, more popularity for the Zohar. I have to assume that this has only increased in recent centuries. Would I be right about that?
Absolutely. Many are not familiar the Zohar HaKadosh was only found, say 500 years ago. Right. It was not the Rishonim, Rashi and Tosfos never saw the Zohar.
Right.
They didn't have the Zohar. So certainly the revelation of the Zohar is of more recent history, and the interest in Reb Shimon has exploded in our very times. I mean, I'm sure you remember 30, 40 years ago, people would go to Meron, but it wasn't even a tenth of what it is today.
Right, no question about that. All right, a couple of them in Hugim. Why do we associate Upsharon, those families that have a tradition not to cut a boy's hair for the first 3 years of his life? Why do we associate Meron, Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, like BaOmer, with the Upsharon ceremony?
Yeah, there is a report by Reb Chaim Vital, who he saw that his Rebbe, the Arizal, went up with his family on Lag BaOmer to perform that ritual, but that's the entire basis.
Right.
So for those who have that custom, it's based on that report of Reb Chaim Vital of what Arizal himself did.
And a lot of people go out of their way from around the world to literally be in Lag BaOmer that day to do that. And that's, again, it's developed as a tradition over all these years. And finally, Rabbi Glatstein, I don't know which one you want to address first, but please address both of them. Tell us about bows and arrows, and tell us about bonfires.
Okay. The bows and arrows are associated with the fact that Rav Shimon Bar Yochai's level of righteousness was so great that there was no rainbow that appeared in his time. The rainbow represents the treaty that God made, that when people sin and it angers Hashem has to recall the treaty he made not to destroy the world. So Rav Shimon Bar Yochai was elevated his whole generation that covenant was not even needed, because Hashem would never come to that point. Right. So upon his demise, so to speak, it's the return of the rainbow. Now we need the rainbow again. Now we need that bow again, to symbolize that God will not destroy the world. In terms of the bonfire, there's a lot of controversy about that.
Oh, I'm glad you're acknowledging that. And I'm sure a lot of people listening who are glad you're acknowledging that. Good.
I'm sorry, what?
I think there are a lot of people listening who are glad that you're acknowledging that there's some controversy around it.
Yeah, first the question is, where does this come from?
Right.
Is there any? We know that it's made. We know that they light one, but the source of it is somewhat unclear. There is a collection of letters by the Bar Tanura where he writes that when he visited Eretz Yisrael and he went on what many say is Yud Ches Iyar, which is Lag BaOmer, he saw great fires lit by Rebbe Shin. And the question is, which Rebbe Shin is that? Now, that's going to depend on what date the Bar Tanura was referring to. So many would like to say that he's referring to Yud Ches Iyar, and the Rebbe Shin that he's referring to is Rebbe Shimon. The truth is, in the critical editions of the writings of the Bar Tanura, it does not say Yud Ches, it says Chav Ches, and the Rebbe Shin would then be Shmuel Hanavi and not Rebbe Shimon Bar Yochai. So that's somewhat of a controversy, but there's a concept in Judaism that Yisrael Einam Neviim B'nei Neviim Heim, that when the Jewish people practice something, that itself gives it credibility, that itself gives it holiest and meaning. Right. So if this is something that's practiced for hundreds of years, there must be a basis for it. And I humbly suggest, as one of the reasons in this book, that based on another beautiful idea, the Chassam Sofer teaches, quoting the Zohar, that when the Jewish people left Egypt, they left on the 15th day of Nisan, and on that day they received their bris milah. And the Zohar says something fantastic. He says that at the time that a person has a bris milah, that's when the Jewish soul enters their body, but it takes the soul 33 days for it to acclimate and get comfortable and, find the right position. It's like when you get onto an airplane, you sort of have to, wiggle, shuffle around until you find that right spot. Right. It takes the soul 33 days until it acclimates into the body. And the Zohar says that the souls of the Jewish people were fully acclimated on Lag BaOmer, on the 33rd day of the Omer. And the Chassam Sofer says that's, in his opinion, the reason for the celebration of Lag BaOmer. It's the day, the joy of the Jewish soul fully acclimating into one's body. And now we understand how it's a day that we could begin to probe some of the secrets of the Torah. Of course, we need full power of our soul to be able to understand it. So the soul in the Tanakh is referred to as a great fire. Ner Hashem Nishmas Adam. Man's soul is like a burning fire. It's a force of great spiritual energy. So the bonfires of Lag BaOmer represent that on this day, the soul is fully acclimated into our systems, and it's able to, so to speak, be ignited in holy fire. And on this day, we try to on whatever level we can to connect with the Torah of Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, who makes an amazing prediction. He says that in the end of days, Uvegin da asidin Yisrael lemitam mehai ilani dechaye. The Jewish people are destined to taste from the tree of life. What's the tree of life? Reb Shimon says that's the Zohar HaKadosh. He says when we do that, Yipgun min galusa barachame, we will be redeemed in great mercy. So certainly we're not on the level to be expert in this great discipline, but every Jew can access Sfarim of the Chafetz Chaim, of the Mesilas Yesharim, of Chaim Volozhiner. There are many Sfarim that we can access and can understand that bring down for us teachings of the Zohar HaKadosh and make them available and accessible to us. So, and even if we just taste that wisdom just a bit, it will help bring the Geula ever closer.
Pretty amazing. Lag BaOmer is a fascinating day, everybody. It really is. No matter what angle you're coming from, it is a fascinating day, and one certainly of significance in Jewish history, to say the least. And everyone's got their own benefit from the day. Everybody gains from the day in different ways. And by the way, we explored a lot about Rabbi Glatstein's book, but I'm letting you know there's plenty more. He talks about the Meron in general and the historic revelations there. And he talks about Bar Kochva and, of course, that whole story and Rav Shimon's inspiration in that entire episode and so much more. So it's really a comprehensive look at Lag BaOmer from so many different angles. And, of course, we are highly recommending it. Lag BaOmer, the fire and the soul, the mystical power of Lag BaOmer, Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, and the Zohar HaKadosh. Rabbi Daniel Glatstein is the author. It's available now as a brand new book from ArtScroll. Go to artscroll.com. You make sure to use promo code radio24 for your free shipping and major discount. Again, artscroll.com. Make sure to use promo code radio24. Rabbi Glatstein, enjoy Krakow and a big mazel tov on the book.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me.
A pleasure. Lag BaOmer, the fire and the soul. Rabbi Daniel Glatstein, always one of our favorite guests here at JM in the AM.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.